In the endless night of the 41st millennium, where humanity clings to survival amidst the stars, the Black Templars march, not as men, but as zealots, forged in fire, bound by oaths that demand eternal war. To live as a Templar is to die 1,000 deaths before the final one. Every few chapters, the story circles back to a haunting refrain: no peace, no rest, no forgiveness, only war. The boy screamed as the blade carved the cross upon his chest. He was no longer a son, no longer a child of his world. He was a weapon, a vessel for the Emperor's wrath. The chaplain's voice thundered, "You are bound to the crusade. Your life is no longer yours. Your death will be your only freedom." The boy's world was ending. The sky bled fire as orbital bombardments shattered the horizon. Villages burned, temples crumbled, and the air was thick with ash. He had no name anymore. Names were for the living, and he had been chosen. The chaplain descended like a specter, clad in black ceramite, his Crozius arcanum glowing faintly in the ruin. His skull helm glared down at the trembling children gathered in the square. "You are no longer sons of this soil," the chaplain thundered. "You are weapons. You are the Emperor's wrath made flesh. You will suffer. You will bleed. You will die. And in death, you will be eternal." The boy tried to swallow his fear, but the ritual dagger came too quickly. A cross was carved upon his chest, the mark of the Black Templars. His scream was swallowed by the roar of distant artillery. The chaplain pressed a gauntlet into the wound, forcing blood to mingle with sacred oils. "This is your oath. You are bound to the crusade. Your life is no longer yours. Your death will be your only freedom." And in that moment, the boy understood the horrifying truth. To be a Black Templar was to never live at all. The pain did not end with the blade. It was only the beginning. Dragged into the fortress monastery, the initiates were stripped of identity, stripped of humanity. Organs were cut, bones broken, flesh remade. The gene seed of the Black Templars was forced into their bodies, rewriting them into something more than human, and far less. The boy's screams echoed in the surgical chamber. Needles pierced his veins, pumping liquid fire into his blood. His heart stopped, then started again, stronger, colder. His eyes burned as new sight was grafted into them, able to pierce darkness and flame alike. But the worst was the silence of the Emperor. He prayed, as they all did, but no voice answered. Only the chaplain's sermons filled the void. No peace, no rest, no forgiveness, only war. When the transformation was complete, the boy was no longer a boy. He was a neophyte, clad in black armor, chained to a veteran brother who would guide him into war. Their first crusade was against heretics who had defiled the shrine world. The neophyte's bolter shook in his hands as he fired, each shot tearing flesh and bone apart. The screams of the dying filled the air, but his mentor's voice drowned them out. "Do not hesitate. Do not falter. Every breath you take is the Emperor's command. Every kill is his will." The neophyte obeyed. He killed. He killed until the ground was slick with blood, until the shrine was silent. And when it was over, he realized the horror. He felt nothing. No joy, no sorrow, no humanity. Only the endless hunger for war. The crusade did not end. It never ended. The Black Templars marched from world to world, bound by oaths that could never be broken. Each night the neophyte knelt in prayer, chains biting into his flesh, penance for sins he did not understand. The chaplain's sermons grew harsher. No peace, no rest, no forgiveness, only war. The refrain echoed in his mind, a rehook that bound him tighter to the cycle. He began to see the truth. The Black Templars were not warriors, they were prisoners. Prisoners of faith, prisoners of war, prisoners of the Emperor's silence. And there was no escape. The neophyte's armor was still slick with gore when the chaplain ordered them into the chapel. Candles guttered in the stale air, their flames casting shadows across the stone walls carved with scripture. Each initiate knelt, chains binding their wrists, heads bowed beneath the weight of their sins. The chaplain's voice thundered, "You are baptized not in water but in blood. Every drop spilled is your prayer. Every corpse is your hymn." The neophyte felt the iron bite of shackles as lashes tore across his back. Penance for hesitation, penance for doubt, penance for being human. When the ritual ended, he was left trembling, his body broken, but his faith reforged in agony. He understood now the Black Templars were not merely warriors, they were sacrifices, living offerings to a God who never spoke. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. The crusade ship drifted between stars, its halls echoing with hymns and screams. The neophyte prayed each night, whispering into the void, "Emperor, guide me. Emperor, hear me." But the silence was absolute. The chaplain's sermons filled the emptiness. No peace, no rest, no forgiveness, only war. The refrain became a chain around his soul. He began to wonder if the Emperor was truly listening, or if the Templars were simply killing in the name of a corpse upon a throne. The thought was heresy. He buried it deep, but it festered. His mentor, Brother Alaric, was a towering figure clad in scarred armor. Alaric taught him to fight, to kill, to endure. Yet even Alaric was broken. At night, the veteran whispered confessions into the dark, names of brothers long dead, battles lost, sins unrepented. His eyes were hollow, his faith a mask. The neophyte realized the truth. Even the strongest Templars were prisoners of their oaths. They fought not for victory, but because they could not stop. And so the cycle continued. The crusade ship descended upon another world, another battlefield. The neophyte's bolter roared, his chainsword screamed, and bodies fell like wheat before the scythe. There was no strategy, no endgame, only the endless march of war. The chaplain's voice echoed across the Vox. No peace, no rest, no forgiveness, only war. The refrain was no longer words, it was reality. The neophyte understood now. The Black Templars were eternal. Their crusade would never end. Their lives were not lives at all, but a horrifying cycle of blood and silence. In the ruins of a cathedral, the neophyte faced a heretic priest. The man's eyes burned with defiance, his lips twisted in a smile. You are slaves, bound to a corpse who cannot hear you. You kill because you cannot stop. You kill because you are afraid of silence. The neophyte's blade silenced him, but the words lingered. Was it true? Was the Emperor deaf? Was their crusade nothing but madness? The chaplain's sermons drowned the doubt. No peace, no rest, no forgiveness, only war. But the seed of horror had been planted. The crusade ship was swallowed by the warp. Madness seeped into the halls, whispers clawed at the minds of the faithful. Demons slithered in the shadows, promising release, promising peace. The neophyte clung to his bolter, his prayers frantic. But the Emperor remained silent. Brother Alaric fell to his knees, screaming at visions only he could see. The chaplain struck him down, declaring him tainted. The neophyte realized the truth. Even faith could not protect them. The warp would consume them all. And yet they marched on. The bonds between battle brothers were forged in blood, but shattered in war. Each crusade claimed more lives. Each battle left fewer voices in the choir of hymns. The neophyte watched as brothers fell, their names forgotten, their sacrifices swallowed by the endless war. He whispered their names in secret, a heresy of remembrance. But even memory was ash. The chaplain's voice thundered, "No peace, no rest, no forgiveness, only war." The refrain crushed the whispers, leaving only silence. The neophytes' lists bled where iron chains bit into them. Each night the chaplain ordered the initiates to kneel, bound in penance, chanting prayers until their throats were raw. The refrain echoed endlessly, "No peace, no rest, no forgiveness, only war." The chains were not merely iron. They were symbols of faith, shackles that bound them to the Emperor's silence. The neophyte began to wonder, were they warriors or prisoners? The rituals grew harsher, flagellation until flesh tore, branding with the sigil of the cross, hours of kneeling on stone floors until bones cracked. The chaplain's sermons thundered, "Pain is purity. Pain is devotion. Pain is the Emperor's gift." The neophyte endured, but each lash carved deeper into his soul. He realized the horror. The Black Templars did not fight only enemies. They fought themselves, their own humanity, until nothing remained but zealotry and scars. The prayers continued, but the Emperor never answered. The silence was suffocating, a void that swallowed hope. The neophyte whispered into the dark, "Why do you not speak? Why do you not hear?" But only the chaplain's refrain returned, "No peace, no rest, no forgiveness, only war." The silence became a weapon, sharper than any blade. It cut deeper than wounds, deeper than chains. It hollowed them out, leaving only obedience. The neophyte watched as brothers broke beneath the weight of devotion. Some screamed in madness, clawing at their own flesh. Others begged for release, only to be silenced by the chaplain's crozius. Faith was not salvation. Faith was torment. The Black Templars were not blessed. They were cursed. And yet they marched on, bound by chains, bound by silence, bound by horror. The crusade ship groaned as it slipped into the warp. The stars vanished, replaced by a sea of madness. Colors bled into each other, screams echoed from nowhere, and shadows slithered across the walls. The neophyte clung to his bolter, whispering prayers into the void. But the Emperor remained silent. The chaplain's voice thundered, "No peace, no rest, no forgiveness, only war." The refrain was a lifeline, but it frayed with every passing hour. The warp spoke. Voices clawed at the neophyte's mind, promising release, promising peace. Lay down your arms, rest, forget the chains, forget the silence. He resisted, but the whispers grew louder. Brother Alaric fell to his knees, screaming at visions only he could see. His armor cracked beneath his own fists as he clawed at phantom chains. The chaplain struck him down, declaring him tainted. The neophyte realized the truth. Even faith could not protect them. The warp would consume them all. Shapes emerged from the shadows, demons wearing the faces of fallen brothers. They whispered forgotten names, offered comfort, offered forgiveness. The neophyte's heart twisted. He longed to believe. But the chaplain roared, "No peace, no rest, no forgiveness, only war." The refrain shattered the illusion, but left only despair. The demons laughed, feeding on the silence. The prayers grew frantic, desperate, but the emperor did not answer. The silence was absolute, suffocating, eternal. The neophyte understood now. The emperor was not listening. Perhaps he never had. And yet the crusade continued, bound by oaths, bound by chains, bound by horror. The neophyte marched beside his brothers, their armor scarred, their eyes hollow. In battle they fought as one, bolters roaring, chainsword screaming. Each kill was shared, each wound endured together. Brotherhood was not friendship, it was survival. They were bound by oaths, by scars, by the silence of the emperor. After every crusade, more brothers fell. Their names were whispered once, then lost to the void. The chaplain forbade remembrance. The emperor knows their sacrifice. That is enough. But the neophyte whispered their names in secret, a heresy of memory. He feared the day his own name would vanish, swallowed by ash. Alaric's death haunted him. The veteran had been his guide, his anchor. But in the warp, Alaric had broken, consumed by whispers. The chaplain declared him tainted. The crusade ship finally tore free of the warp. Reality snapped back like a cracked bone forced into place. The stars returned, cold, distant, indifferent. The neophyte staggered as gravity normalized, his vision blurred from days without rest. But the silence followed. The chaplain ordered all hands to battle readiness. No explanations, no comfort, no acknowledgement of the brothers who had died screaming in the warp's jaws. They were erased, as if they had never existed. The neophyte moved through the armory, securing fresh magazines, sharpening the edge of his chainsword. The scent of incense mixed with oil hung heavy in the air. Veterans prayed mechanically, their voices hollow. No passion, no fire. Only ritual, only repetition, only war. A Vox signal flickered through the ship's cathedral-like halls, a distress call, fragmented, weak. Imperial, outpost, under siege, aberrations, Emperor protect. Then silence. The chaplain announced the verdict: immediate deployment, cleansing action, no survivors expected. The neophyte felt nothing. No fear, no anticipation, only the weight of inevitability. As the dot pod doors slammed shut around him, the darkness inside felt familiar, like the void between prayers. The pod screamed through the atmosphere, metal shuddering, bolts cracking. The brothers chanted the refrain: no peace, no rest, no forgiveness, only war. Their voices were iron. His voice was ash. The pod struck the ground like a meteor. The doors blew open.
Smoke and fire swallowed the world. The outpost was already lost. Walls torn open, corpses nailed to bulkheads, symbols carved in flesh. The stench of warp taint seeped through every crack. A daemon host awaited them at the gate, a writhing corpse wrapped in chains, its skin covered in burning sigils. Its voice hissed through broken teeth. "You came seeking purpose, but found only silence." The Templars opened fire, their bolters roaring. The creature exploded into a storm of blood and light, but its words remained. They sunk deeper than shrapnel. The neophyte moved through the ruins, cutting down heretics, mutants, things that were once men. Every kill was mechanical, every step was predetermined. Then he found the chapel, or what was left of it. Inside, scorched candles flickered, their flames struggling against the cold air. Bodies lay scattered across the floor, Imperial guardsmen who had died praying. Their hands were clasped, their eyes were open, their lips frozen mid-plea. But the Emperor had not answered them either. The neophyte Kalen knelt beside one of the corpses, a young soldier, barely older than he had been when he was taken for initiation, fear still etched in her features. He whispered the forbidden words, "I remember you." Boots thundered behind him. The chaplain's shadow filled the chapel entrance. His voice was calm, too calm. "You kneel before the dead, neophyte?" The neophyte said nothing. The silence in his chest was too heavy. The chaplain stepped closer, his crozius dripping with gore. "The dead are irrelevant," he said. "Only the Emperor's will matters." The neophyte finally met his gaze. "Does he hear us? Does he hear any of us?" The question fell like a blade. The chaplain froze. For the first time, something flickered behind the skull helm lenses. Not anger, not zeal. Fear. The veteran's voice dropped to a whisper. "You will not ask that again." But the neophyte saw the truth in the chaplain's trembling hand. The doubt had always been there, buried beneath sermons and scars. No one was listening. Not to the chaplain, not to the Templars, not to anyone. The silence was universal. The silence was eternal. The chaplain stepped back, regaining his composure. "Back to the lines, neophyte. There is cleansing yet to do." The neophyte rose, but the shift had already begun. Something subtle, something irreversible. The chains around his soul no longer felt unbreakable. For the first time, he wondered, if the Emperor's silence was absolute, what were they fighting for? He followed his brothers into the burning night, but the refrain no longer bound him. No peace, no rest, no forgiveness. Only war. He did not speak the words. He only listened to the silence.
And felt it answer. He stepped back into the ash and flame, but something inside him had shifted. The refrain no longer chained him. The silence had answered, not with words, but with a question he could not ignore. Night fell quickly on the broken outpost. The remaining brothers dug in around the ruined perimeter. Fires guttered. The air was thick with smoke and prayer. The chaplain paced like a restless predator, eyes hidden behind black lenses. He spoke only twice, once to command, once to warn. You will not ask that again. Yet the neophyte still held the question like a blade. He moved away from the small group, toward the shattered walls. Beyond them, the world was quiet, except for distant groans of wind and the crackle of dying flames. He forced himself to breathe without the chant. He forced himself to listen. Silence. Not empty. Heavy. Intent. A shadow detached itself from the darkness. Not a daemon, not a brother. A weathered human, one of the guards who had survived. His eyes were red-rimmed, his uniform torn. He limped toward the neophyte, wary, grateful, terrified. They did not speak at first. They simply watched the silence together. Finally the guard whispered, voice thin. Heard them. Heard the voices in the warp. They promised rest. I thought... His words stopped. He glanced toward the chapel ruins where the chaplain had gone to burn the dead. Shame, fear, relief fought across his face. I should have fled, but I stayed. They don't want us to kill us. They want us to forget, to stop. The neophyte understood, more clearly than ever. This was the same temptation that had whispered to Brother Alaric, the same poison that had nearly claimed him. He looked at the guard. A flicker of something like mercy passed through him. Maybe that's what it is. Not release. Just forgetting. Just ending the question. The guard nodded, stared into the black beyond the flames. Doesn't sound like peace. The neophyte looked down at his stained gauntlets. No, he agreed. Not peace. They stayed like that until a chaplain's return, a cold, decisive figure emerging from the chapel, holding a burning brazier high. He flung the contents into the air. Embers danced. The stench of corpse and flame mingled. You carry heresy, he said to the neophyte, voice low but lethal. The chaplain's hand tightened around his crozius. The familiar thunder of war filled the air. Yet the neophyte did not flinch. Maybe I'm just listening. A ripple of shock passed through the ranks. Some brothers shifted, unsure. The chaplain's jaw clenched. You will not speak such words in my presence again. Back to the lines. He swung the crozius once, brushing the neophyte's shoulder. Pain, but not deep. A test. The neophyte stepped forward, not retreating. Pain was already part of him. He had known it for weeks. This was different. This was a challenge to the very echo that had kept them moving for millennia. He remembered a whisper from a far older chapter in the lore of his kind, one of their own, long crusading and unyielding, a figure who had led them into ceaseless war to prove loyalty, never resting, for more than 10,000 years. He understood, almost too well, why the silence had to be so loud. The chaplain's eyes blazed. He ordered everyone ready. They stood. Their weapons were held close. The night thickened. The neophyte put his hand on the wall of the ruined chapel. His palm pressed against cold stone. He closed his eyes. For a moment there was nothing but silence. Then, beneath it, a faint murmur, like distant waves against a shore, like voices far away. He let it be. He did not repeat the refrain. He did not speak the words of war. He only listened. And in the black he heard. Not an answer from the Emperor, not exactly. He heard the space between command and obedience, the gap where a choice might live. The chaplain barked another command. The brothers moved. Engines started.
The neophyte remained a heartbeat longer, then followed. Outside, the world was still burning. The distant sky flickered with unknown lights. They would march on. They always had. Their crusade would not end. But now, something inside him had changed. He would carry the silence as his own weapon. Not to destroy himself, not to erase the question, but to keep it alive.